Hello, this is Jason Clement, Technical Sales Manager at ISONAS, and welcome to this online training video. This video is basic troubleshooting. Our course objectives are: understand how to first define the problem, review some basics of troubleshooting, review how to troubleshoot network connectivity issues, review my door isn't working troubleshooting steps, and discuss troubleshooting advanced modules like Active Directory integration. So what are some basic troubleshooting steps? Number 1, verify what the actual problem is and categorize it. Sometimes end users will call you with issues and they'll say X, but really Y or Z or something different is actually happening, but it's just disguised as what they're seeing. For example, a customer calls in and says, "My door's not working correctly." Well, that could mean any number of things. If you ask them to read their credential at the door and tell you what the LED does, that can tell you a lot of information right there. If they read their card and the LED goes green but the door does not unlock, well, that means the permissions are correct, the reader controller is allowing access, but the lock isn't unlocking. If they scan their card and it just flickers red, well, that could be a network connectivity issue, meaning the device is offline and hasn't received any new settings, or it could be a configuration issue where that person just doesn't have permission. So with one question, I've kind of narrowed it down pretty quickly. With a couple more, I could probably narrow it down even more. So again, if necessary, you need to do some initial testing or ask a couple questions to narrow it down to really one category. Is it wiring, is it network connectivity, or is it a permissions or configuration issue in pure access? Start with the basics first. Don't start with the hardest possible scenarios and work your way down. Sometimes it's just the most basic thing that can cause a problem in the system. For example, a person says their card doesn't work at a particular door. Well, check to see if that user is actually in a user group that gives them permission to that door, or that they're in a user group at all. If the user is not in a user group, they probably don't have permissions to any doors, or maybe they just haven't ran an update. The old adage of "have you tried turning it off and on again" really applies here, and we kind of laugh at it in tech support, but sometimes it is the most basic thing that you need to start off with that could be the actual issue. Don't be afraid to ask for help. In my career, I've seen many people bang their head against the wall for a very long amount of time trying to figure out something that was a problem, and I've actually done it myself too. Don't be afraid to just open up a ticket with support. They may have seen the issue before, and in fact they probably have and are able to resolve it within a few minutes rather than trying to figure it out 4 or 5 hours yourself. Trust but verify. When an IT administrator tells you that switch is supposed to be giving you PoE but your device doesn't boot up, test it. Make sure you're getting PoE out of there. Or the door hardware people tell you that they've installed the lock in their 12-volt DC locks. Pull the lock out. Look at the part number. Google it. Make sure that it's actually able to take 12-volt DC and work. Taking a look at the basics. Has anything changed recently? This is something that I think a lot of us forget to ask. In a pure access tenant, if all of a sudden all the devices disconnect and don't reconnect back up, have you changed anything recently? Oh yeah, well we changed our subnets on our network. Well, it's basically going to break all of our devices communicating on a network, so it'll have to be a reassigned IPs or reassign a new DHCP scope. Wiring issues. Just check your connections first. Verify that your colors are connected correctly. Verify that you have a really solid connection underneath there. You don't have a bad crimp or anything like that. I would say probably at least 75% of my wiring issues in the past were just all connectivity problems where I didn't have it connected correctly, or I miswired a wire, or I crossed 2 wires or something like that. Verify your power. If you got an external power supply, make sure it's putting off the right voltage. If your lock's not working, make sure it has 12 volts where it's supposed to have 12 volts when it's supposed to have 12 volts. But verify your power, use your multimeter. Network connectivity. Check your connections. Make sure everything's plugged in, powered up. Make sure that your switch is connected to either the corporate network or to another switch that's connected out to a router that's getting out to the internet, but make sure everything's connected up correctly. Test your cable. Make sure you just have that cable tester with you just to make sure the cable's good. I've seen it before where the wires have been crimped on correctly for PoE, but not for the Ethernet connectivity on a Cat5e or Cat6 cable, so the device boots up by PoE but then never communicates because the communication pairs aren't terminated. Configuration. Verify your groups and rules. We've looked at the one-to-one method, which is most common, HR people to HR doors. Well, if you look underneath the user and they're not part of any group, chances are they're not able to get in any doors because they have no permissions. And don't forget to click update. Even if you log in and it doesn't show red or orange where it says changes made, click update. Just go ahead and try running an update, wait a couple minutes, and then test again. Verify your devices are connected. A classic issue with this is the system works great, but we added a new card and it doesn't work at any doors. Well, if the access points are disconnected, then of course the update can't get to the access point and the new cards won't work. This applies to advanced features as well, mainly network connectivity and your configuration. Make sure that the basic stuff is checked first. Basic commands in a command prompt. Here in Windows, if I just hit the Windows button, go to my search bar, type in CMD, bring up a command prompt. The first one we'll take a look at is ipconfig/all. Displays TCP IP network configuration values. So what does this help you with? Well, if you unplug your reader controller, if you're having connectivity issues, unplug your reader controller, plug your laptop into the same switch port, and use the same network settings that the reader controller had. So if it's DHCP, set your laptop for DHCP. If it's static, then go ahead and set the same static address in there. Usually this works for DHCP because it'll tell you what address you're getting. ipconfig/all. And then you'll have various connections on here. Most of them won't be connected. But if we scroll up to look for my Ethernet configuration 2 here on my local network, I can see the MAC address, I can see that it's enabled DHCP, and I can see that it's got this DHCP address of 192.168.1.25. I also see my default gateway, my DHCP server I'm getting this DHCP address from, and more importantly, my DNS server. If you looked under here and you're supposed to be getting DHCP, but you got a 169.254.something.something address, well, you're set for DHCP, but you're not getting a DHCP address. So maybe you're on the wrong VLAN, maybe there's not a DHCP server on that VLAN, there could be a number of issues, you'll have to go to the network administrator. But at least you've gathered some basic information here and you go to them and say, hey, I plugged my laptop in, it's set for DHCP, but I'm not getting an address, what's the deal? The next one is ping, and the -T option is helpful as well. This tests the reachability of a host on an IP network. So again, same scenario. I'm not getting connectivity on my reader controller. I verified that I'm getting a proper IP address. If I go in here and type ping ISONAS or if you're using Pure Access Manager, you just might be using a host IP of the local instance. So here I can see I can ping ISONASPureAccessCloud.com and I can get a reply. This only tests the reachability of the host on the IP. I could still have other issues that's calling connectivity problems, but at least now I know I can ping Pure Access Cloud, I can get from that device out to the cloud and it sees the host address. Now if you press up whenever you're in the command prompt, it'll pull up the last command that we ran. So just by pressing up, I pulled up ping ISONASPureAccessCloud.com and I'm just going to add the -T option. Basically what it does is it pings ISONAS Pure Access Cloud continuously. So this is helpful if you have weird connectivity issues where you get knocked off every once in a while or frequently or something like that. If you ping it and you ping it continuously, watch your time where it says 312, 317, 313, etc., etc. If all of a sudden you get weird jumps where it's like 120, 123, 130, and then it jumps up to 800, 900, something like that, and it stays there for a few seconds and then drops back down, you're having connectivity issues either through your ISP or on the local network, in which case you'll need to show that to the local admin. But again, this is all about doing a couple things on your own and then handing it off to the network admin saying, here's what I found. That way they can start troubleshooting at a higher level by just the simple information that you've given them. To break this, you just hit Control-C and it stops the command. Alright, next is tracert or path ping, and these are the most critical ones. This displays the route of IP packets to a particular host. So ping tests the reachability, path ping or tracert actually tells us how it gets there. So if I type in path ping ISONAS Pure accesscloud.com. Cloud. Now it's going to start off at my laptop, and then it's going to go to the next hop. So I can see a couple local addresses there, 192.168.1.1, then .254.254. Then I can see Muskegon, Michigan, FrontierNet.net, and then I see that I'm getting out further here until I actually get out to Amazon. And then you'll see it bounce around in Amazon a little bit sometimes once it gets there. As long as you see something like this, you see Amazon in this line somewhere, then you're good to go. Once you get there, you've got a solid connection out there. Now when you have issues, what you'll see is you'll see your first device, and then you'll see like 1 or 2 local addresses, and then it'll just stop. What I'm seeing here is that I'm actually getting out to the internet when I see this mi.frontiernet.net. That's good. If all of a sudden you see a couple local addresses and then it just stops, you're stopping inside the network somewhere. Netstat is a less used one. What Netstat does, I'm going to stop this by hitting Control-C. It displays every TCP/IP connection that you have on your laptop or your server or something like that. Doesn't help out too much in a cloud configuration because you don't have access to the server. But when you're doing pure access, if you see a device that shows connected, but it's not acting like it's connected or something weird like that, you can just run a netstat command and see if you can see that TCP/IP connection on port 55533. If you see that the connection is connected, established through netstat, then it's actually more than likely actually connected to the server. And finally, ARP-A. This displays your ARP cache, i.e. what MAC addresses the PC is communicated to. So if I run ARP-A, basically what I'm looking for are MAC addresses that start with 0018C8. That's our manufacturer prefix. So if I pop open a config tool and I hit discover units and I don't find any, you can always just pop into a command prompt, run an ARP-A, and see if anything is popping up in the ARP cache. If it pops up in the ARP cache, but you don't see it in the config tool, there's something going on, contact support. But if you open up the config tool, hit discover, don't see anything, go into your ARP cache, and you don't see anything either, chances are you're on the wrong VLAN or those devices aren't powered up or something like that. So those are some basic commands that we can run to the command prompt. When we're troubleshooting cloud connectivity, ensure the device is configured correctly. We want to make sure that it's in client mode, it has a host address, and IP settings. So if you pull up your network config tool, we'll discover units here. We'll go ahead and click on advanced settings to pull up more information. Just highlight any of these readers or the reader controller or IP bridge that's giving you trouble, and then go down here and click show reader info. Here we can see DHCP is enabled, what its current IP address is, what mode it's in. If this does not say client, it's never going to connect. What my client port is, and what I'm connecting to, ISONASPureAccessDemo.com. So this device has all the correct settings, and it should connect correctly. Test your internet connectivity from the VLAN to the subnet. Obviously, if you're using cloud and you can't get out to the internet, you're going to have an issue. But more specifically, you need to test it from that VLAN or subnet that the reader controllers or IP bridges are sitting on. Because the subnet they're connected to may be a different subnet than your PC that you're plugging in, or maybe even the server may be on a different subnet. That subnet may have internet connectivity, while the VLAN the devices are on do not. So you need to make sure you test internet connectivity. So just unplug your reader controller or IP bridge, plug your laptop into the same switch port, and then try to ping or path ping out to ISONASPureAccessCloud.com to make sure you have internet connectivity. And in these cases, work with the network admin. Could be a VLAN or network config. Your device may be in the wrong VLAN, or perhaps that VLAN just wasn't configured for internet access and it's just a simple fix. Make sure that any firewalls, you have an exception for port 55533 to get out. And watch out for adaptive security appliances will cause issues like firewalls. Local connectivity is easier because now I have a server on site that I can log into and try to ping or path ping the devices out straight from the server. But again, ensure your device is configured correctly. Client mode, host IP address, IP settings. Most likely your host address will be an IP address for the local server rather than a URL. Watch out for Windows firewall on the server. I have seen it turn itself back on after it's been turned off. Test connectivity from the server to the device, tracert or path ping. And again, just work with the network admin. Do a path ping, see where it's stopping out at, and then go to the IT admin and say, I ran a path ping, here's where it stopped at, can we take a look at this? Same issues pretty much, VLAN and network config, firewall could be an issue but not so much on a local network, and security appliances as well. PoE power, test your Ethernet cable, make sure all your pairs are good. Check your distance. The PoE spec is 100 meters, and you can push it further sometimes with good cable or Cat6 because it's a little thicker gauge, but check your distance. Look for shorts or opens, obviously. Also watch out for old cable that's being reused. That old cable can severely shorten your distance. Try a PoE injector in the network closet. You're told that PoE is turned on your switch port, you plug the device in, it doesn't work. You take the device off the wall, plug it in right to switch, it still doesn't work. Try powering up with a dumb PoE injector like a Power Design or something. If it powers up then, most likely you're not getting PoE from that switch. Probably just has a PoE shutdown on it. Ensure the switch has enough power for all devices connected. If it doesn't have enough power, it may just not give any more power out that switch port because it knows that it can't provide any more power. Unplug the pigtail to remove any wiring issues. So if it's not booting up or it boots up for a split second and then shuts down or something weird like that, go ahead and just unplug the pigtail. Once you unplug the pigtail, any wiring issues you have will immediately be removed. And finally, plug the device in at the PoE source. You tested everything, can't figure out what's going on, unplug it from the wall, plug it right back in at the switch with a 1 or 3 foot cable, and test it there. My door will not unlock on the hardware side. When people say their doors won't unlock or my door won't work, it could be a hardware or software issue. Have them read a credential. If Pure Access shows an admit with no unlock, then most likely it's hardware. If Pure Access shows decline no badge, it's most likely a software issue. Of course, make sure that you have the proper suppression in place. If you read your badge, gives a valid admit, it flicks green a half second, and then all of a sudden it reboots, you forgot your diode 99.9% of the time. Verify there is power when power is supposed to be there, i.e. use your meter. If it's a mag lock, you should have 12 volts on it when it's supposed to be locked. If it's a failed secure electric strike, you should have 12 volts on it when it's supposed to be unlocked. Check the input voltage for the lock. If you have a 24 volt DC only lock, applying 12 volts from the reader controller that's powered by PoE is not going to cut it to unlock that door. So check your power draw and manufacturer recommended power input. If you see that you're getting 12 volts to the device or 24 volts or whatever you're supposed to be getting and it's not working, test the lock against another verified power source to determine if the lock is actually bad. Do you have an EDK? If yes, let's continue on. Make sure the EDK has power, should have a single red LED on in its normal lock state, and that the second LED turns green on a valid admit, whether it's a valid admit through clicking admit in the software, through a credential, through putting in an unlock, that second LED should turn green while the door is unlocked. The RCO3 is set by jumper access and the RCO4 is set via pure access. So the RCO4 utilizing an EDK has to be connected to pure access in order to tell it that it has an EDK. If your second LED is flashing amber, then your wiring is wrong. In one class, I saw somebody forget to strip one of the wires, so the copper wasn't able to connect to the terminal. So it looked like everything was wired correctly, but the second LED was flashing amber. It wasn't until we pulled the wire out that we saw it was mistakenly not stripped. Once we stripped it, put it back underneath its terminal, it worked fine. If the second LED turns amber on a valid admit, hard reset the EDK. This can be done by pressing a paper clip through the hole on the front of the EDK. You'll feel a little button to press, hold it down for 3 to 4 seconds until both LEDs turn on, and then release it. That'll hard reset the EDK to look for the default code from the reader controller. If the EDK functions correctly but the door doesn't unlock, check your lock circuit. So you read your credential, provides a green LED on the reader controller. It provides a green LED, second LED on the EDK, but the lock doesn't work. Check your lock circuit. Your power supply or whatever may have blown a fuse or something like that. But if the EDK comes up green and the lock doesn't work, it's almost always a wiring issue on your lock circuit. My door will not unlock on the software side. If you see a decline no badge without a name or it says system admin, the badge is not enrolled. Almost 100% of the time, that's going to be the problem. If it says decline no badge with a name, so decline no badge Jason Clement, that means I don't have permission at that door, or somebody forgot to run an update, or the device isn't connected and I've been added into permission for that door after the device disconnected. If it says decline no time zone, you have permission at that door, just not at that time. Check your objects in user and access point groups. The nice thing about Pure Access is when you click around those groups, you'll see how things are linked through Pure Access. Always try running an update, even if it's not red or orange up there and saying changes made. Just go ahead, try running an update, wait a couple minutes, and then test it again. Check for any holidays in your system that could potentially be overriding normal schedules. And watch out for bitmask changes. In the bitmask module, you probably remember we saw when you try to change the bitmask, it gives you a big warning saying if you change this, you could potentially break your system. So if all of a sudden a lot of credentials or all your credentials stop working and somebody's like, well, I changed this bitmask because I thought I needed to, just go ahead and change the bitmask back to what it was and you'll be good to go. If you're troubleshooting advanced configurations like our Active Directory integration or Milestone integration or other VMS integrations, it's a little more difficult. Start simple. Ensure that you have connectivity. That's the biggest thing. If you lose connectivity, obviously these things will stop working. So just make sure you have connectivity between all points. Have there been any recent changes that could affect the system? If they made recent changes in their network config, server config, a lot of different things, any of those changes could cause issues with these advanced configurations. Isolate where the actual problem is. For example, with Active Directory, is it in the Active Directory server itself, or is it connectivity back to Pure Access Manager or Pure Access Cloud? And in these cases, you'll normally find yourself working pretty closely with the network admin. And sometimes when all else fails, reboot. Turn it off, turn it back on again. You can try restarting certain services first, but sometimes it's not as clean as just rebooting. The ISONAS support portal. This is the ideal way to open a support ticket. So if we go to isonas.com, go ahead and click on the support. And on the left-hand side, click visit our support portal. If you're not registered, go ahead and register, create an account here. I'm already registered, obviously, so let's go ahead and log in here. So we got a lot of different stuff going on here. We can open a support ticket that way. We can manage both our new and see old cases. So if you're out in the field and you're like, I know I ran into this 6 months before and I contacted support and they helped me through it, well, you can log in and take a look at that old case and figure out what you did to fix it back then. Escalate severe cases by putting Severity 1 Critical in the subject line when you open the ticket. Use it, just don't abuse it, please. And visit our FAQ for a quick and easy resolution before opening a ticket. Got this big search bar at the top. Have a question? Yeah, my reader is rebooting. Reader resetting upon admit. And I can guarantee if you open this up, it says you forgot your diode. So you can just type in a couple keywords here and see if something pops up, and you may not even have to open a ticket. But again, this is the best way to go ahead and open up a support case. If you call the number, you may just get put into voicemail. Then somebody will listen to that voicemail and put in a ticket the exact same way it would be as if you just opened a support case straight through here. In this course, we've talked about understand how to first define the problem. Again, what the customer is telling you is the problem may not be the actual problem. We talked about some basics of troubleshooting, mainly start at the basics and don't start at the most advanced stuff first. We reviewed how to troubleshoot network connectivity issues. When you have the cloud, sometimes it's easiest to unplug our device, plug in your laptop with the same IP settings, and try to path ping or ping out to ISONASPureAccessCloud.com. It's a lot easier when you're doing Pure Access Manager because usually you're on the same local network. It's a lot simpler. And finally, we talked about some my door isn't working troubleshooting steps. Ask the customer to present a card that's supposed to work at the door and see what it does. And we talked a little bit about troubleshooting advanced modules. Again, start basic, make sure you have connectivity, and get the network administrator involved as soon as possible. Thank you for watching this training video, and have a fantastic day.